On today's episode for Senior Handler Series 1, I'm joined by Mr. Steve Burkholder. Hope you enjoy this one. You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years. Well, hey, folks. Welcome to the Hunting Ops Podcast. I'm Alan Gingrich, Director of Hunting Ops at United Kennel Club, and today we are going to talk about some senior handlers and their top 3 dogs. And my first guest for this very first Handler Series, Senior Handler Series episode is going to be my good friend from Ocala, Florida, Mr. Stephen Burkholder. Stephen, welcome.
Absolutely. Same here. Excited to be on today. I have to reminisce in that whole senior, I don't know if I'm really ready for that stage of my life, but we're not going to get any younger for sure.
Hey, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you and I could both compete on senior cast now by UKC rules. We're of that age now.
That's kind of scary, isn't it?
That's the opposite. The opposite end of that. I still get this picture of that little brick clubhouse in Albion, Indiana, on the other side of the world from where you're at in Ocala, Florida. But a little brick cement block clubhouse, Albion, Indiana, little coon club. I think that's the first time I ever saw you at a hunt.
That's been a few years ago, Alan, for sure. And I can tell you, I remember back then, we was teenagers and thinking to myself that having to compete with some of them older people or whatever, never dreaming that 30 years down the road, here we are. But it's life. Or more.
Talking about being on a senior cast.
Yeah. Absolutely. That would have been back in 91, probably 91.
Early 90s.
Like that.
Yep. Early 90s. I remember that's also where I met Mackie Mans, and I think Dick Brothers was there that night. Back in those days, the clubhouses were packed.
Oh, yeah.
That was a small clubhouse too, but even the parking lot was packed. I don't even remember where they called dogs out. I can't imagine they could call 50, 60 dogs out of there, but maybe they did. I don't know. I don't remember what.
Oh yeah.
I don't even remember what I was hunting, but I remember that's the first night I met you, and I just, for some reason, I just remember you were you were a busybody, and you were into it. I'll just say that.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of good memories. A lot of them older gentlemen. They certainly taught me the ropes. The Clemens boys used to come down there, and all of them. Good memories. Good memories.
Well, hey, Steve, as we talked about, we're going to try a new series, if you will, a senior handler series, emeritus handler series, whatever we're going to call it. We don't even have a name for it yet. It's that new. But I think the idea is I want to get some, every so often, every 6 weeks or so, I want to do an episode with senior handlers, guys that have been there and done that and have had success throughout the years. And I want to hear who their top 3 dogs are. We might do a couple honorable mentions and all that, but I have reached out to you and several other guys that we want to have on this series and asked you for your top 3. You've given me your top 3, and I know who they are now, but hopefully it'll be an interesting podcast to listen to, and specifically, some of your number 2 and 3. We don't want to kind of mention them, cover them as well, but we want to go more in depth on your number 1 and why they were why you rated them where you did, and some of the successes you've had with those. So with that, let's just dig right into it. What is your number 3? Now, before we get there, I looked in UKC's records for dogs that you have owned, and you were predominantly a blue tick man. I mentioned, when I first met you, you were hunting blue ticks. You were a blue tick guy. You have, I don't know if you know it, but as of today, you've got 22 blue ticks registered in our system still that are in your name. And I know one of your top 3 is not a blue tick. It's a walker, at least one of them. So I looked how many walkers you had. You got 17 walkers listed on our records as well. Do you have any idea?
Well, I knew that number was up there. It brings back a lot of memories. If you really think about it, wouldn't have guessed that number. Just recollecting the past couple weeks after we'd kind of had this conversation, started digging some things, started talking to my wife, Kim, about different things and dogs and stuff like that. And it brought back a flood of memories. Very fortunate over the years on being, competing at a high level, but very fortunate to own some really, really good hounds. Certainly wouldn't have guessed that number, but it doesn't shock me on the flip side of it too. I remember one time when we was hunting a dog by the name of Droop Jr. and stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute or whatever. But I remember at one time being either a co-owner or owning 7 Grand Nights at one time, and several of them we was competing, throughout that time or whatever. So that doesn't happen without a tremendous support group. I had a lot of great young guys my age, some of them younger than me, several years younger than me, that we did it kind of together, and we just had a blast, doing it.
Yeah.
So it kind of brought back some memories on that side.
Yeah. Hey, just very briefly before we get started, what was the first year that you started hunting competitively? Would you remember the very first year?
The very first year. Yeah, the very first year that I hunted competitively would have been in roughly in the fall of '91. 91, and it would have actually been, from what I recall, it actually been. I believe the very first event I went to would have been out of the Marcellus, Michigan club. I rode up there with Mackie Mans, and I was hunting. He's kind of the one that introduced me to competition hunting, and I mean, the bug was already there, but that was the first event that I would have hunted in. I was hunting. I'm trying to think of what the name of the little female was. I hunted this little female for about Belle, I think was her name. I hunted her. I know this. I got 8 second place wins on that little female. Never got the elusive first. But it would have been in the fall of '91 out of the Marcellus, Michigan Coon Club.
Yeah, Southwestern Michigan Coon Hunters Association. Good club. I used to hunt out of there too. I always liked that.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Hunting there was
still going today.
Oh yeah.
Still going today.
Yeah.
Hey, so there we go. So Steve, let's get right into it. Let's talk about your number 3. Who is your number 3 all time? And when we say number 3, folks need to realize you've probably, off the top of your head, how many different dogs would you say that you handled in the night hunt? So you probably didn't even stop to think about. I don't think I would have, but there's got to be, what is it, 20? Is it 30, 40? What does that look like? Different dogs that you handle. I was
thinking about that. It's ironic you asked that. I'm going to say over the years on different dogs, I'm going to say that number is probably close to 50.
50?
40 to 50, somewhere around that time frame. I'm going to say it's probably closer to 50 than 40. Different hounds over the years that I handled in hunts or owned or maybe hunted for people or whatever. But yeah. 100%.
Yep. And I'm sure in that number, there's probably some that you probably have forgot about and forgot that you handled them. But without going into all that or trying to dig up memories here or scratch your memory box here, let's just go right to your number 3. Who is your number 3? And let's talk about what this dog is a little bit and why she's on your number 3 list.
Yeah. Well, number 3, believe it or not, as an avid blue tick guy, always have been all my life for those that know me or whatever. And I think a lot of that goes back to just when I got introduced to hunting. That was predominantly the breed that I was hunting with. But it's a little female called Stylish Abigail that we acquired. She was probably 14, 15 months old, somewhere right around that age when we got her. It was kind of a crazy deal on how we got her. But she would be my number 3. Loved her. I mean, I hunted her a lot. My wife actually hunted her in her later years. But she would be my number 3 pick.
Number 3. So I'm looking at a record that I pulled off of UKC's systems this morning. Born in May of 2005. So she would have been about 20 years, born 20 years ago, right at this time.
Hard to believe.
So 20 years ago. It's hard to believe that it had been that long ago.
Yeah.
Hey, I remember Abigail. She was a open spotted dog. What was it about her that you liked? You bought her as a pup. You said you trained her up and everything.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story and how we even got to own her. Had no intention at that point in time. She was really the first. She really kind of introduced me to changing my, to hunt more than a blue tick. Up until that point in time, we'd predominantly hunted blue ticks, and I just seen myself. That's all I was ever going to hunt. But I'd partnered up with a really good friend of mine, Shane Groves, on a couple different dogs. And he called me out of the blue and he said, "Hey, there's a guy that's a logger. He's wanting to sell this little female. He's got a dumper. He's got a seller today. He's just the way it is. And I think we should buy her." And I asked him how much they wanted for her, and he said the guy said he'd take $3,500. And back then, it's quite a bit of money for a dog or whatever. And he said, and he goes, "And I'm telling you, she's worth it right now, Steve. I don't have the money to get her or whatever. Do you want her?" And I was working out of town at the time. And I said, "Shane, I don't know if she's any kind, if she's good. I mean, she's good." And he said, "Well, the problem is she's a walker." And I said, "Do what now?" He said, "She's a walker." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I just give you the money for her or whatever. Maybe you can just give her money back or whatever, at some point in time. Obviously, I'm a blue tick guy or whatever." And I said, "But go over and see my wife. She'll get you the money you can pay for it." So anyways, that's kind of how that happened. And we had her.
You had to dig it up in the backyard. Are you thinking of a bank or in the backyard?
I'll say this, okay? Anyways, he went over and got the money. We bought this little female.
Dig around Dave Dean's backyard, maybe.
Exactly. So anyways, we ended up buying her or whatever, and didn't think much more of her. Now we already owned quite a few hounds we was competing with and stuff like that. And so through that process, we had a guy by the name of Jeremy Coley hunting for us. And he had a really good friend of his. Some of you guys may recall this. I know you know him, Brian Gray, that actually competed out of the Marcellus, Michigan club. Now I think about it a lot. He was up from that area. And he was looking for something to hunt. And we was looking for somewhere to go with this little female. I don't really know nothing about her. It was decided that Brian would hunt her for us for a couple, 2-3 months. And then after that, we was going to probably sell her, or the guy that owned her maybe was going to buy her back. Really didn't have a plan for her. And I was coming home from work one time. I was coming across the toll road, and they've been calling me saying, "Hey, you really should check this female out. This little female you really should check her out," or whatever. And I said, "Listen, I am not going to compete with a walker hound. It's not in my genes. I'm completely satisfied with blue ticks or whatever." And I always got beat by these walker dogs. So the last thing I was going to do is have one of them. But finally I was coming down the toll road, and Brian Gray called me. I'll never forget it. I was probably 15 miles from his exit coming down the toll road. And he said, "Steve," he goes, "I'm out hunting." He goes, "Literally get off at this exit." He said, "I'm hunting about 3 miles from there. I just want you to come." He said, "You don't even have to walk to the tree. Just come. I want you to go with this female." And so I finally reluctantly, I said, "You know what? There's got to be something to it. I'm going to just stop by there." I hadn't seen Brian in a while anyways. But anyways, I pull off the exit. I stop. I go hunting with this dog, and he was hunting her by herself. And I'll never forget that we cut her in there. I had no intentions of getting out of the truck, walking a tree, nothing. I have no hunting clothes, nothing. And this little female, like Abigail style, went in there in 3 or 4 ground barks, 5 ground barks. And when she come treed, I reared up out of my seat, and I mean, had a beautiful just signature locate, and then just over into that short ball chop that. And this happened about 3 times. I'm talking in quick fashion. I mean, he pulled her off there, come back to the truck, and went to the next drop, and then he recast her a couple of times. Anyway, she treated 5 coons that night just in style. Got back in my truck and went home, but I could never get her out of my mind. I love the mouth that she had on her, and she was just a really, really awesome, like, disposition type of female. And that's kind of how it started, what started changing my tune or whatever. And about a month or 2 later, maybe 3 months later, Brian actually hunted her in the hunts. I think made her a night champion, put a couple wins toward grand on her, started winning some in PKC hunts. And up to this point in time, I'm an older dog guy. I'm not one that usually likes to hunt a young one. Took her through her.
So she's not even 2 years old at this point.
She's not even 2 years old at this point. And so, but we was hunting her in some money hunts. She was super stake eligible and stuff like that. He obviously had her on the top of the state. And then she needed like 3 wins or 4 wins to grand out. Brian was predominantly, he didn't predominantly hunt. He hunted all different registries. And so she deserved to be granded out. And this is what changed everything for me. I decided to get her. I was looking for something to hunt, just mess around with. And I decided to get her and put her last 3 or 4 wins on her. And I put that little female in 3 casts. And I'll never forget it. Went to Reading, Michigan, back-to-back nights. And I don't know, she scored like, I don't know, 14 to 6. You could probably pull the record, 14 to 1,600. I know it's hard to believe, but I mean, she was just that type of female. She was action-packed. Obviously, coons was moving good or whatever. But I knew from that point that weekend that little female, when she got a little bit older, she was going to be at my house, because she was one that I loved to hunt. She was easy to take care of. Didn't, very clean around the tree. Very easy to handle because, I mean, 95, 97, if something treed with her, you're going to pull her off the tree by herself 100% of the time unless something covered her. And she was quick and fast. So it just, just that's kind of how it started out, and then just started competing her, and I loved hunting her. And, she was the first female, first dog period, that I owned, that I made platinum champion, which is $20,000 you have to win, that kind of thing. And then of course we hunted her, in several, world hunts and compete, just everywhere. So she's definitely number three, and it's really not even a question on it.
Hey, you mentioned a record that I have access to, and I'm looking. I actually pulled it up right now, and I see that we don't have all of her plus point or her cast winning scores here, but obviously she came through the era, when you had to have a first to make a night champion, and there was no Grand Night 2 and all that stuff, or 2, 3, and so on. But I'm looking at she scored good a lot actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 3 times over 1,400 plus, actually.
Yeah.
So,
and what was amazing about that, Alan, that was usually by different handlers. I remember that, probably, Brian hunted her, I hunted her, Shane Groves hunted her. If I recall right, there was a couple other people that had handled her. She was just one of them females that, I mean, she didn't, she was all business when you cut her loose, on that side of it. And, she was kind of quiet on the ground. I always said if she was a better strike dog, it's hard telling what could have happened. She obviously looked really good in the north. She could look good in the south, but when, every dog has strong points, every dog has holes in them. And her biggest hole is she wasn't going to leave your feet barking when she opened. She was an honest strike dog, and most of the time it was third or fourth strike. That's just the way it was. But I tell you what, it's crazy to say this. I discovered something with that little female that I never had known about a dog before that a lot of people didn't know. But Garmin's kind of come out right during that era, toward the tail end of her career. I think maybe back then still using the beep system or whatever.
Yeah,
this little female was so smart that you would go out, and she was dynamic off of a recut. I mean, you cut her loose, she could tree one 100 yards from you, 50 yards from you, or 200 yards. She was just around you. She could tree them or whatever. And I discovered you would hunt a woods out and you would watch her on that Garmin. And before you had Garmin's, trying to pinpoint where dogs are at and coming back into the fold. But she would tree 3 or 4 coons in a woods, and she would make a circle. And this little female was so smart. I showed different people this. She would go back and check that first tree to see if that coon was still in that tree. And we watched it more than one time. If it was, she'd go to the second one. If that coon had come out of that tree, you could hear her restrike that thing and just burn a track through there and retree that same coon. And you'd go there where that coon was in that you treed first, it would be gone. You go over and she'd have a coon, and she would literally strike from that tree and take a track away from there. Watched her do it more than once. And so it was just kind of an interesting fact. We didn't know that until we had Garmin's, and never would have if we hadn't known it on that side of it. But she was just a really smart female and would hunt. She would hunt the territory that you put her in. She wasn't one that would get out of the pocket, roll through there from section to section. She had a lot of cooney sense to her.
Biggest win for her, Steve? What would you consider was her biggest win?
She had a lot. She was one of them females. I was thinking about that.
Or is that maybe it's not a big win. Maybe it's just a compilation of what she was able to do.
She had, for me with her, the fact of her being my first platinum, obviously when she wrapped up that going platinum, with a young man by the name of Travis Klaus, was just young, just getting into hunts, and he drove down to the Indiana State hunt and finished her out to platinum. You know what I mean? Obviously competing in many different things that she won. I would say with her, it was a combination of everything that she done. She never really had that big signature win that you would you hang your hat on or whatever. It was just, she was consistent. She was tough to beat. And back in that era, people knew when they drew her, when things was clicking, it was over when it started,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I would say,
Hey, we want to.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Some of the pro hunts and stuff like that, obviously, very, very tough competition. So, yeah, I would say that a combination on that.
Yeah. How do you think she would stack up with today dogs today? Still be competitive?
Well, I think so. I think she'd be very competitive, and I'll tell you the reason why. We live in an era now where these dogs, let's just face it. I mean, they're big hunting dogs. A lot of them are blowing out of sections and stuff. And I've always said them dogs that you can keep in pocket, you can win with. And I think she would. I think actually in today's world, would probably even be more competitive than what it was back then, because back then stuff was still bunched up together a little bit. Here, stuff is more apart. It's just the way it is. It's the way they're trained. It's the way our dogs of today's era are. And she was one of them that was going to treat them coons around you, so she was always going to keep you in it. I think she would probably be more competitive today than she was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, if we want to move on here, we might need more than an hour to do a top three here.
Yep.
I remember this dog very well too. You were just kind of started her about the time I started at UKC, and again, born in 2005, a open white spotted dog is what I remember, mostly white. She was off of Fletcher's Stylish Jake. Now, Jake is not a white dog.
No.
He's a basically tricolor off of Sackett Jr., right?
Yep.
Fletcher Stylish Jake was off of Sackett Jr. That's her top side. Her bottom side is where I figured out she probably gets that white from. Her mother was a granite named Gossett's Pine Ridge Chick, who, by the way, John Gossett is the breeder of this cross right here. Who Chick was off of Stylish Clover, and right there is where the white comes in. So she's Sackett Jr. on top and was Clover on the bottom.
Had a great pedigree behind her on her bottom side, especially. Obviously, top side. I mean, you can't take anything away from Sackett Jr. and everything there. But talked to John Gossett a lot. He taught me a lot about that breed, tendencies, and stuff like that, and would almost call verbatim what was going to happen on that. So he knew that side very well, and there's no doubt that she wasn't an accident of being the way she was.
Yeah. On that bottom side goes back to Stylish Hayes and Wessel's Wild Julie, so yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You nailed it. Bred well. It's not an accident for sure, but yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know you really like that little dog there. So yeah, Stylish Abigail, number 3 for you.
Hey, Alan, I don't know if you've been messing around with this new Houndsman Advantage app at all, but I've been playing with it some, and it has some really cool features on it. One, it has the interactive scorecard view where you can assign strike and tree points at the touch of a button, and it automatically totals your scores after each set of points are scored and valued.
Yeah, no, I like it as well. Some of the features that I like is that you can access the rules and that it comes with a search function to easily find any specific rule. Also like that there's a place for your dog's registration numbers, and you can store pictures of your easy entry cards. I like that you can track 2 dogs' performances when out pleasure hunting. You'll find some analytics on your dogs. You can record their accuracy, win percentages, and a whole lot of things like that.
No more lying here on this app. The last thing about the scorecard I'll talk about is it has the summary view as well, where you can see the total points you have and the pending points that you have, along with tree timers for each dog. So it's going to come in handy for judges as well. So check it all out on the new Houndsman Advantage app.
Let's talk about your number 2. Who's that, Steve? Another Walker dog?
I said this several years ago that people was going to probably would hard be to fathom this, and even for me, it's really kind of clear cut in my mind. But my number 2 dog would be Droop Jr. He was my number 1 for a lot of years, and like they say, most dogs get better after they've been dead for many years. But just looking back, on that side of it, a little dog that I whelped at my house, called Droop Jr. that I obviously changed my life in many ways in the coon hunt world. So Droop Jr. would be a clear cut second.
Hey, let's start from the top. He was off of McAvoy's Blue River Droop, which is a dog that you were very familiar with on the top side, who goes back to like Myers Blue Smoky 2, I think maybe.
Yeah.
On the top side. Bottom side was his mother was a dog named Blue Boy Beth, which is, I think, a dog the McAvoys had as well, right?
No, actually, you raised Beth.
Yeah,
I got Beth from a guy by the name of Doug Holliday first good dog I really ever owned. She's my first Grand Night that I ever made. Was
you're on record as getting credit as a breeder for this for Droop Jr.
Yeah, 100%. So what happened is I'd bought the little Beth female at 13 months old. She was owned by Doug Holliday, and he had ran into some difficulties and had to sell everything. And he wanted to sell dog box, light, tracking system, the whole works, wanted $3,000. And I didn't have $3,000 back then to spend on the whole kit and caboodle, but I had drew her one of the first hunts he ever put her in. And I made my mind up that if that dog ever come up for sale, that was the dog I was going to buy, because she split treat a couple of times that night. Not going to lie, she treated a possum. Just really kind of what hurt her, what beat her that night, really. But everything else she did, I absolutely loved. And she had pressure tree dog, just loved her. Anyway, she come up for sale about 2 months later, and I ended up giving Doug $1,500. And then he held on to the papers until I got the other $1,500 around, and then got her. And I bought everything that he had or whatever. But she changed. She's the one that started it all for me.
You made her a Grand Night, talking about Droop Jr.'s mama, Beth.
Made her a Grand Night, and I was competing at the Ashland Spring Hunt. This was back when a friend of mine, Jason Diltz, we decided our very first big event that we ever competed in was at the Ashland Spring Hunt. Some of you guys folks know
March. It was always held in March,
and it was cold, and we was so broke and so young that we went over there and we took blankets and sleeping bags with us. And didn't even have I don't recall. I don't know if we had a topper on the truck or not, but we took his truck over there to hunt the Ashland Spring Hunt. I'll never forget it. It was cold as you can imagine, but we slept in the back of that truck all weekend. But it was at that hunt, I was hunting Beth, and he was hunting a dog called Dan 2. Still driving Dan 2 off of Mackie Manz's old Dan dog. And we went over that hunt, first big hunt, didn't know nothing about it or whatever, but ended up drawing out Mike McAvoy, who was handling Droop that weekend. And that's kind of how everything kind of come together. And it was very rare, because Beth was out of Myers Smoky too, and so was Droop. And he said, "Hey, what's your little female out?" And I said, "I don't really know the pedigree behind this dog. She's out of some dog called Myers Smoky too." And he said, "Do what?" And I said, "She's out of some dog called," he goes, "You gotta be kidding." So is mine. And that's kind of how a friendship was formed. And, obviously as years went on, we obviously partnered up on several dogs or whatever, but that's how the cross come about. When I got ready to breed Beth her first time, I actually ended up breeding her to Blue River Droop, which is a half brother, half sister cross, and that's where Droop Jr. come from. There was 9 pups in that litter. There were 7 females and 2 males. There was a really beautiful male, and I'd promised Mike Parrish and his boy Cody a male out of that litter, and I was so embarrassed. I said, "You guys take the good-looking one. I'll keep the ugly one over here." So that's kind of how the story started with him.
Yeah, I remember Droop Jr. very well, obviously, but and hunted a bunch with him. Saw him go a bunch of times. Drew him. He was hard to beat. He was in that time, in that era. He was, everybody in the area knew him. Obviously, he was just good. He was fast. He quick, fast little dog. And you're probably right. He wasn't the best looking blue tick around, but man, he looked good doing what he did.
His name actually wasn't Droop Jr. to begin. His name, we actually changed it right when we was getting ready to finish out the night champ. Back then you could change your name up until they was night champ. Yeah. But his original name was Blue River Crook. And
that's right.
And because he had a crooked tail in the end. And but then we decided, after we had hunted with him, that we decided we're gonna take and change his name to Droop Jr. A lot of people don't know this, but when Junior was young, he was still called Crook. We was really busy then, had a lot going on. I had raised him at my house, let him run loose, and I just liked him from day one. I mean, he was so doggone ugly when he was a puppy that you couldn't help but like him, because nobody else was going to. But he was a very outgoing. He was very bold, and but he had very personable. And I sent him to Paul Taylor, and back then Paul Taylor had just sold Michigan Swamp Rooster, if I recall right, in that time era. And he was hunting dogs for the public. And I sent him up there for a month. And Paul was one of them guys that if he liked it, he'd call you and say, "Send me another couple $100. If he didn't, he'd say, "Come, you got a week to come get this thing out of my yard." You know what I mean? That's just the way it was. And so I got a hold of Paul after I don't hear nothing from him. I call this joker like 3 times. He won't call me back. And finally I get a hold of him. He said, yeah, send me a couple $100 more or whatever. And wouldn't tell me nothing about it.
He needs more work.
Yeah, 100%. This goes on for like 3 months. And then I call Paul like that, because now I'm sitting there going, okay, what's going on or whatever. And he said, hey, why don't you come up and hunt with him? It was getting toward the tail end of that 3rd month. And so I called the McAvoys up. So we ride up there and we hunt. And obviously he looks good. I'm kind of shocked, to be honest. And
hey, let's give folks and our listeners an idea of what era we're talking about. He had a birthday of February of 1996 was when he was born. So Paul had him when he was how old?
Well, he was just a year and a half old. I mean, so this would have been
okay. So about 97, 98 is when you're talking about.
Yep, 97, okay. 98. And anyways, we went up there, and of course, Paul now he tries to buy this dog off of us bad. And unless you're living underneath a rock, Paul Taylor.
He's an English. He hunts English
guy, and he's wanting this blue tick. I mean, because obviously blue ticks get their rap, whatever. And I wouldn't have sold him. I don't care if he'd have paid off the farm. I wouldn't have sold him or whatever. That dog was coming home with us. And a little sentimental there because he was obviously out of Beth and out of Droop and stuff like that. So we brought him back, and that's just kind of where it started.
Yeah, so you obviously hunted him, competed in several years in the Prina series, a dog of the year series is what it was. Talk about a little bit of that. He was he won that at what, twice?
Yeah, he won in 99 and 2000. Really kind of back up there. So we actually had tried to. I mean, we was coming home. We had actually tried to. Mike and Jerry had took him down there and hunted him, and Jerry said, "Hey, you called me up on the funny story real quick. He called me up and he said, hey, listen," he goes, or it was Mike, and he said, "This dog probably ain't going to cut the mustard. Every dog goes through a phase." And there was actually a guy that tried to buy him, paid for half of him, never could come up with the other half of the money. And anyways, that deal fell through, and I ended up getting him in February. Of that year, coming home from I believe it was the Winter Class or Southeastern Walker Days. And Jerry said, hey, we're going to have to do something with this young dog or whatever. Bill LaRoche is not going to keep him at his house anymore. So I went over and picked him up. And there's a whole lot of history behind that. But yeah, I just hunted him. He was the first dog that I really put my boots on the ground, where I'd hunted, I don't know, I think it was 88 out of 90 nights. And there was a lot of times I fell asleep at the base of the tree and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because working every day and walk in there or whatever. But started competing him, started hunting him in some of the local hunts. And it just, we started realizing we had something special. He was one of them hounds that pleasure hunting him. He was so, and sometimes it would almost aggravate you. But man, put that dog in a dog box and take him to a hunt where there's people and dogs and stuff. It was like him turning his hat on backwards and saying, hey, you know what? This is going to be fun. He loved to compete. That dog loved to, if you hunted him by himself, he'd tree a coon and aggravate you. Just do things that just drive you nuts. But put him on the ground with another dog or 3 other dogs, and it was game on. And
highly competitive, wasn't it?
Very highly competitive. And, the frustrating thing with him is sometimes it got him in trouble because sometimes he would compete to his level. So if other things was, he had a lot of casts he dominated, but there was also other casts that he just barely squeaked out at the end because he was playing around doing what them dogs was doing. So that was just, he was just one of them type of dogs or whatever. But yeah, competed him in 99 and 2000. Back then, he was one of, I think, only 3 dogs to date that have won the Prina, maybe 3 or 4 dogs to date that have won the Prina race back-to-back years or multiple years. Up until that point, there was a dog by the Hardwood Dan, the only one that had done it before that. But he did it in 99 and 2000 when that particular race was still drawing a lot of competition, and it wasn't easy.
That was huge.
Yeah,
that was a huge deal to win that series.
Yeah, it was. And so had a lot of fun with him. I mean, he was my first good dog, the only dog I ever buried in a casket, a lined casket with a couple coats. So it kind of tells you how much he meant to me.
Yeah, 1996. So how old was he when he passed?
He would have been 12 years old. So he was in, I think it was 2010. He was 11 coming 12. When he got cancer. He was completely healthy, and all of a sudden his stomach started blowing up one day. And of course we took him in, and vet said that it's what he's got. And we was going to do surgery and take the tumor out. And I took him up there to get that done. And I think Junior knew it was in because the next morning when they got up to do the surgery, he was gone. So
yeah.
It was a tough deal, but man, I tell you what, the memories, the friendships that dog created is, the enemies that he made along the way as well. I mean, I remember a really good friend of mine. I haven't talked to Joe Allman in years. Boy, I tell you what,
Michigan.
he had a dog called Buzz, and he was competing with Buzz, and I was competing with Junior, and the dog had so many quirks. The dog was one of the smartest dogs I ever owned, and we're in a hunt one night, and he's got me beat, and he just always said that Junior was his nemesis. But we're walking into a tree, true story. We're walking into a tree. I have to have his coon to win, but he's not treed right. But what do you got? I mean, I got a tree, and it's actually at the reunion. It's held out of LaGrange, Indiana, and I'm walking into a tree at the very end. Hunt's over. If I have a coon, I win. If I don't, I lose. And we're walking in, and he's treed, and he's sitting on his butt. This happened at the Michigan State Championship, and it happened at the reunion, same year. It's when the kitten coons are out. And he's treed on a stump that ain't any higher than 5 foot. I mean, we stand higher than the stump. And when we're walking in there, you can see these little eyes on top of this stump. And he sat on his butt just treeing. And I immediately know, because what had happened previously, I knew it in Memorial Day weekend. I just asked everybody to turn their lights down really low or whatever in standard. I just nonchalantly went up, snapped on him, and I said, "You guys can start shining." And I mean, I'm sitting there hanging on to him, and when we shine, there's 2 little kitten coons on top of this stump. And when our lights hit the stump or whatever, these 2 little kitten coons bail off the backside of the tree and take off. And Joel said, "I quit. I'm not going to. Next time I draw you out, if anything like this happens," he said, "I'm yours." But Michigan State Championship, when he ended up scoring like 11-1200, we'd walked in there. He was treed on a blowdown, and he was treed. I mean, it looks like it's going to be minus. And I mean, these guys are laughing. They think, "Oh, I've got you now. You're taking a minus," and they're both split treed from me. It's going to be a big turning point in the cast. And I walk up on this limb of this trunk. I mean, it's not a very big tree, but it's blowed over. And it was a den, and there was a little kitten coons right there. He could have stuck his holes twice the size of a basketball. He could have whacked every one of them kitten coons. Never touched them. Just sit on his butt and treed. And I said, "Guys, you're not going to believe this, but a whole litter of kitten coons here like that." And they come up on the walker dog. He said, "I have seen it all now." He said, "We had you on the ropes," and he said he could have whacked everyone. And most dogs would, you know what I mean? Never touched it. Never touched it. So, but yeah, absolutely good. Oh my goodness, I could write a book. I probably should.
Well, obviously you and I came from the same area, so I'm very familiar with Droop Jr. And thank God you were guiding us. And I used to guide a lot too, so I didn't draw you all the time. Usually when we did, it might be out of Michigan, some of the Michigan clubs or something. But I remember several nights too, and not just that, pleasure hunting with him a couple times as well. But just a fast little dog, a good little dog. I don't care if you can't recognize a good hound. You're not a houndsman, but he was certainly one that made everybody look, and everybody knew it. Looking back, he didn't win every cast, obviously. There's very, very few hounds, if ever, that have done that. But what would you rate him as far as a percentage of a cast winner? He won a ton of them.
Well, I'm going to say that honestly, and this is being very mild, but on the safe side, very conservative side, 80% of his casts that he competed in. And I remember one time, this was when he was a Grand Night. So every hunt he's hunting is Grand Night cast back then. But he'd won 17 casts in a row. And one thing that for him that made him so special is it didn't matter where you put him down. He won in multiple states. I know at the very end he had 21 or 22. I'm thinking first place Grand Night wins in multiple different states. I mean, he was the type of dog you could hunt him in Virginia one weekend, and he would, and he could win there, and you'd take him to Michigan the following weekend. He had that ability. He was just very competitive. You know what I mean on that side of it. He was very, very consistent on that side of it.
Hey, probably the one hunt that probably, and he was world champion caliber, and you had him in the world hunt. I remember when in 2000 at Columbia City, Indiana, you had him in the Final Four there, and that was a bang up cast that night. He fell a little short. He was leading throughout. That had to be a heartbreaker, But
well, it's a heartbreaker.
But he's a dog that gave you those type of chances to win big like that.
He was, that hunt will haunt me for the rest of my life. He won that hunt, and I give it away, plain and simple. I mean, I put 2 minuses on him that night that I put it on him. I mean, plain and simple. So it is what it is. You look back at that or whatever. Obviously, the hunt before that to get to the finals was a hunt that I'll never forget. I could replay step for step on what happened there. I had a dog in the cast called Blackface Red and a young English male. I can't remember. And won that cast at the very end. I mean, I'm beat the whole night or whatever. Wins it at the very end. And then obviously get to Saturday night. I qualified Junior eight straight years, and he made the finals 5 of them years, 8. So that's just the kind of consistency he was.
Yeah. Impressive. He would be number one for a lot of senior handlers. He would be number one for a lot of them. He was definitely I'll never forget that dog. But hey, we could probably go on, and I'm sure you have a lot of stories. But so hey, we've talked about Abigail, your number 3. You put Droop Jr. as your number 2. And it's pretty amazing that you have something you put above Droop Jr. To me, anyways, it is, But hey, really quickly, give me 2 honorable mentions. You've had plenty of other good dogs. Who would round out your top 5? Just let's not. I want to spend a little time with your number 1 here. Yeah. I don't have a whole lot of time left, but who would you give an honorable mention to as 2 other hounds, really quick?
Obviously, I own a lot of them. I had world champions. I mean, a Magic Trick dog that won the PKC or all like that. But I have to say, night after night, 2 of the honorable mentions. The little female I had called Lou. She was an Autumn Oaks winner. What a lot of people don't realize about Lou, and you think to yourself, how does she not make the top 3? But she also was the first blue tick to win a $4,000 pro hunt. The very first pro hunt I ever entered in up in Onstead, Michigan. I went up there, and these guys don't know me. I don't know them. She won Autumn Oaks one weekend, and the following weekend wins the pro hunt. And so she obviously was a really good hound. Loved her when she was on. She was untouchable. When she was off, you could beat her with a poodle. That was a little bit of her hole in her or whatever. And then another female that we hunted for a lot of years. I love this little female. Was a little female called Gypsy Lady. Was off of Droop Jr. Had competed, won blue tick days, scored more with her than any dog I ever have. With all 4 guys in the cast watching everything unfold. Scored 17 and a quarter one night at blue tick days. And I remember the whole cast stayed together. Even one guy had withdrew, but stayed together in that cast, walked to every tree, seen every coon. So she was a fun little female to hunt. I mean, loved her. Jeremy Kolick hunted her. A lot of different people hunted her. Won the Michigan State race and PKC, just a lot of other things. So 2 really good hounds, 2 favorites, on that side of it.
Yeah. I almost forgot about Lou, and I remember Gypsy, but
Lou, by the way, won Autumn Oaks with Tyler Sturry at the time. Tyler just got his driver's license, got done with the end of the hunt. Yeah. Couldn't read a road map, and he would call every now and then. We had to guide him back to Autumn Oaks, get the scorecard back in time. So,
but Tyler Sturry is the one that owns Bushwhacker.
Yep, 100%.
Walker dog. Yeah. Yep. Hey, so you mentioned these are your top 5 now. So you haven't even mentioned another female that your crossbred that you had probably most recently one you had a lot of success. But that just goes to show how many you've had some really good dogs here.
I've been very blessed. Very blessed.
Big Country and Salt Creek Jenny or one of the
it was one.
What was her name again?
Babe.
Babe.
And I'll be honest with you, if she doesn't get her skin deal there or whatever, she would have probably could have very easily been number 3, maybe even above that. I did more with her in a year than I did any other hound that I had of any of the 3.
Alan, you've been feeding Eukanuba dog feed for a while now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have, and I've really been able to put my beagles to the test, mainly running snowshoe hare up north where they run the hardest, where I put 15, 20, 25 miles on them easily in a day. And I've found that the premium performance sport has really paid dividends. Mainly, I noticed their stamina.
Yeah, same feed that I've been feeding. I think my dog looks good on it. He's really feeling good, and less kennel cleanup for me, so I highly recommend it as well.
UKNUBIT, the official performance dog nutrition partner of UKC.
Number 1, Steve. Who's your number 1?
Obviously, Big Country. I'm gonna be honest with you. I never figured in my mind that I would take and say that, in my mind, when Junior come through that era and I had Abigail and I hunted with dogs all over the country, never figured there'd be a dog that would hold that number 1 spot. But as far as all around, tip of the nose to the tail, to the tip of the tail. Big country is, and I'm gonna be honest with you, this is not even. I know it's hard for someone to believe, but it's really not even close. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3 in that order, and it's really not even in my mind on a debate.
Yeah. Hey, let's start from the beginning. He was a 2012 model. In December of 2012 is when he was born. He is off of Goodson's Rowdy Bocephus, a dog that produced a lot of good offspring. So he's one of them. And his mother was a dog by the name of Shelton's Cotton Oxy, who goes back to a dog named Bynog and McDonald's Hat Creek Sadie, and it goes back Mead bred way back, goes back to Ed Mead stuff on the bottom side. Top side, Bocephus was off of Double Springs Bodacious, and his Bocephus's mother was Van Deventer's White River Salem Sadie, who is in the final four of the World Hunt. Again, very well bred dog, but you didn't train him up. How did you end up with him? He came from Donnie Walston in Indiana. Chris Powell and Donnie Walston had him as a young dog.
Yeah,
they kind of had him early on in life, and then so tell us that story a little bit.
Really, I mean, fate. I mean, there's just pure luck. I mean, my wife, we was laying in bed one night. I had prominent walkers at that point in time. My wife really wanted me to hunt a blue tick. And I said, honey, they don't make any good ones anymore. I've hunted with them all. And she said, well, you're too picky, you know. And I mean, at that point in time, I had 2 or 3 grand nights. And I just, you know, when you get smitten by 1 or 2 good ones, the bar is so high. You know what you're looking for. And I didn't want something that won in your state. I didn't want something that won north of I-40 or south of I-40. I wanted something that when I showed up a hunt, I could win with. And I honestly, I'm not saying I'd give up looking, but I was looking, and we was laying in bed one night, and she was surfing through ads and stuff like that. My wife loves messing with puppies and young dogs and stuff. And she pulls up an ad and she goes, well, what do you think about a pup out of this cross? And I said, well, if I was to get one, I'd get one out of that cross. I can tell you, because I looked at the pedigree and I'd seen many of these dogs I hunted with, and they just had all one thing in common. They was all coon dogs. And I said, if I was to get one, it'd be one out of that cross. And so that was left at that. About 2 months later, she said, hey, I bought a pair of pups off that cross. I got one for you, and I got one for your buddy Jason, who had kind of got out of hunting for a while. And he said, you need to go down and meet this guy by the name of Chris Powell to pick him up. And I said, Chris Powell, the DNR officer? And she goes, yeah. I said, he owns, she goes, he's the one that's got the litter. And so went down to pick up these pups, called Chris. We joke around, laugh about it, whatever. Anyways, go down and meet him at Cabela's, just right north of Indianapolis there, to pick up these 2 puppies. And we're sitting there talking about good dogs or whatever. And I said, you know, probably never happened, whatever, but I'd love to hunt another good one. He said, well, I think we've got what you're looking for. And I said, Chris, I've heard that 1,000 times. I've even almost quit going, you know, because I said, and I told him I was being honest. I said, most of them don't know what a good one is. And he said, well, I'm just telling you, if you think that, he said, next couple of weeks when stuff slows down or whatever, just come down and go hunting. And a couple of weeks went past, and it was February. It was cold out, and it just stirred inside me. I got to thinking to myself, I said, you know what? If I might as well go down and check. I mean, curiosity is going to kill the cat. So I took and went down there and hunted with him 2 nights, and seen the same thing that them guys seen. He was very raw of what he become. You know what I mean? But, you know, Donnie obviously works for a living. They're family people. And Chris said, you know, we probably took him in the hunts as far as we're going to take him. And but the dog's got potential. And I seen it that weekend. So that's kind of how it come about. Ran across big country, just turned 4 years old at that time.
Yes, that's so you ended. He was already trained. He'd already been in some hunts. Was he titled already at this point when you got him?
He was a night champion. Didn't have, I don't believe he had any wins toward grand. And literally they'd put him in 2 PKC hunts. And the only reason for it is Donnie had the guy to hunt one night out of the Labor Day Classic. And he said the only way he's going to guide is if he can hunt, and they send a cast to him. And they needed a guide bad, so they entered him, and they sent the cast down to Donnie, and he ends up winning the cast and gets in the Final Four at the Labor Day Classic at the warm-up hunts. So that's kind of really about the exposure that he had in the hunts up to that point.
Huh. Why was he number 1? What made him big country?
Heart.
Obviously it's everybody knows big country. Anybody that hunts knows him. Doesn't matter near or far. You know, UKC, all the registries, everybody knows who big country was. But why? How did that happen?
Well, he was a well-rounded hound. He didn't really have holes in him. He's number one because he had the least amount of holes of any dog I ever hunted. That's just the way it was. But the number one thing that Country had that a lot of them don't, he had heart and he had stamina like nothing I ever seen. He was a stallion. I mean, this dog was big. He was built to run. And he had a disposition out of this world. He wasn't a super competitive dog. He was a dog that you loved to pleasure hunt, and he was a dog that you loved to competition hunt. And he had an average track mouth, $1 million locate. Had the more coon sense than any dog I've ever hunted with. And people can call me goofy, but Ben Crocker and a lot of different people just mentions on like at hunting with him. I would show them what this dog would do via the Garmin. Had I not had the Garmin, I would have missed some of this. But when I brought him back from Donnie and Chris's that night, we struck a deal, and I brought him back, and I started running him on a treadmill. And y'all, I'm not kidding you, that dog's gait was 7.2 mile an hour. That was when he was in stride. This is how he loved to run. And I would run that dog in 2.5 weeks. I had that dog running 2 hours in the morning in February of that year and 2 hours at night. That's 28 miles a day. And that dog would come off the end of that treadmill like he was shot out of a cannon. Like that's how much fire and desire that dog had. And I told my wife, I said, if he ever gets to where I can generate what he is right there into the right things, that dog will be unstoppable. And so that's kind of what set him apart or whatever. But the other thing is too, the more I hunted him, the more I got to know him. That dog, it didn't matter where you hunted him at. It didn't matter if he was in the north, the south, the east, or the west. His ability, I used to think in my mind that dogs, when you only scored one coon in a cast, it was luck. You know what I mean? You were just in a bad area, and it's just the way it was. But when you have a dog that won 8 out of every 10 of them casts, where he was the only dog that scored the only coon you looked at, changed your whole thinking. And all the time I hunted that dog, this is a statistic a lot of people don't know, and all the times I hunted that dog, he only ever won one cast with circle points. The rest of them was all plus point cast winners. It's just the way it was. And when he parked it, he had a coon. It wasn't like that early on. Made a lot of dens and stuff like that. I had to do a lot of work with him. He was one that you couldn't feed. You just couldn't feed him. You know, he didn't, you know, he just the way he was. I mean, another thing that he had in common with Junior, he would not kill a kitten coon. It was his nemesis. If he ran across a kitten coon in a wheat field, he'd sit there and just bark and woofer bark at it. He was in a hunt. He was screwed because you couldn't tree him. You know, you could try to get out there. And of course, you know, he just woofer him through there. He would not kill a kitten coon. A full adult coon, kill it in a heartbeat. You put him on a young coon, he would never kill it. And it was just the way it was. But his ability to hunt different seasons of the year, different than I've never seen another dog do it. Like in the summertime, you know, different seasons, you know, cutting dogs along edge of cornfields and stuff like that, you're just going to jam them, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. Summertime, you could take that dog when the corn and that beans and stuff like that, where coons are predominantly out in the woods because it's really hot out. They're out in the cornfields, the bean fields and stuff. You could take him inside timber, 200 yards, flip him loose. He would find an edge, and you would never catch him inside of woods from that point forward, no matter what. In the wintertime, you could cut him down an edge, 4 dogs racehorsing down a lane. He would hit the timber and go right through the center of it. It was just like it. I've never seen that. I showed it to people many times. It just like he knew there was a coon. And the other thing is, you know, he could win an hour cast. Smokey, our good friend, his nickname is Smokey, but Carlisle Miller, we was in a hunt one night. We scored 7 coons in 1 hour. In an hour cast, he ended up winning the cast with 550 or 575. But he was a dog that could tree coons around you and just literally pull him off and go tree a coon in 30 seconds or a minute. And it's like he knew when them coons around you, when they'd tree the last coon in that area, and you could flip them off of that and literally in minutes, just a couple of minutes, be in there a quarter to a half and, you know, trail a track through them and pow, come treat. He was just that style of dog. You know, he wouldn't sit there and try to find one that wasn't there. It's like he almost knew everything was treed around there. Now it's time for me to bust through. You know, a lot of people had him pegged as a big hunting dog, but he hunted as he come to it. If he had to go, he would get in there quicker than anything I've ever seen on snap. He didn't run junk, so he didn't, like a lot of these dogs today, they're big hunting dogs and all that kind of thing, trailing around for an hour. Listen, y'all, they're running junk. Okay, people just don't want to admit it. They bang around on junk and tap this and tap that. Then all of a sudden, boom, they run a little hot track and come treat. Unless you're living underneath a rock, it's just the way it is. So, it's just, and he wasn't that style of dog. Country was a style dog. He had one thing on his mind, that was run raccoons and tree them, and he didn't have to have all that other nonsense. There's a lot of big winners that do that. However, he didn't have to have that nonsense in order for that to happen. And that's really kind of what set him apart,
Big dog. We were talking about Droop Jr. Droop Jr. was these two dogs were two totally different. Their makeups were two totally different.
Totally different. Yeah.
One's kind of a little speedster, and the other one's a big dog. And as you said, he still could cover a lot of grounds and do it quickly too. But what kind of a mouth did he have on him?
He had a medium track mouth. He was a good strike dog in any company. He wasn't automatic. That's just the way it was. When he opened his mouth, he was struck. I got minus for him babbling one time in his whole entire career that I hunted him. But he wasn't a dog that was going to get you in trouble. But he had a medium track mouth, but he had $1 million locate. His locate set him apart from anything he did. It was a 2-3 big dime balls, nice clean tree dog, hard chop mouth tree dog. He'd get in that rhythmic chop where his back leg would bounce off the ground, stuff like that. You could be walking through a cornfield a half a mile from him. You got 5-6 guys walking through there, and you could tree that dog walking wide open, people talking. It was so distinctive, so loud. He was fun to hunt.
Any specific hunts that really stand out that that you handled this dog in that?
There's several, but there's one hunt that I'll never forget. It's a memorable,
Before you say that, before you go into that, I made a little note here that I've heard Josh Michaelis mention it a couple times, that he hunted with him one time, and whatever hunt that was in, he didn't want to hunt with that dog again, just for the sake of, he thought that was the most perfect dog and that he had ever hunted with. So I don't know if it's the hunt. I don't know if you know what hunt he's talking about or not.
Yeah,
and maybe you weren't even hunting him at that time.
John actually was hunting him in the hunt or whatever.
John Strickland.
Yeah, and a kind of a backdrop on that story. John had just purchased him with Ashley in later years, and he went out to this hunt, and they told him the way you beat Country is put him in coons. Well, Country just goes out there and dominates him. You know what I mean? Because they thought that it was going to do, and they come back in that night and said, well, that's not going to work. So the next night they decide they're going to put him in where there's no coons, because, obviously that's how they're going to beat him. And after Country treed the third coon, and none of them dogs, maybe one other dog had made a tree or whatever, they was walking to the fourth tree and the guys all quit. This was a big hunt. I'm talking 20 or 15,000 to win or something like that or whatever. And the guys come back in that night and said, but if you're going to beat Country, better not do it that way, because you're not going to beat him that way either, But Country, one thing that stood him apart, kind of like the Abigail female, is when you was hunting him, there's obviously in some places you have, if you often thought in your mind, if a dog is trailing a coon, how does he know he's keeps trailing the same coon, right? Well, every coon smell is different. And that's just the way it is. But Country would mark. When he was running a track, he would mark sometimes, because he'd give you these goofy barks when he come across another coon track. And he would go on and tree that coon. You could pull him off there and walk him 100 yards or 200 yards, cut him down the edge of a cornfield, right toward maybe see a coon setting up 200-300 yards down that edge. And if he had his mindset to go tree that coon that he come across, he would go down there, make a loop, go right back there and strike that track. I would mark it on the Garmin, show people this, and he would go take that other coon and tree it. He was just a solid dog. He was. Ben Crocker watched it unfold.
That's what labs do.
Ben Crocker seen it one night. I was up there hunting with him. I said, he's going to go right back here. This is where he's going to strike this track and go tree this coon. He's saying, no way. We literally walked 100, 200 yards back to the edge of the field, cut it down the edge of a cornfield. McFadden or somebody from Kentucky was up that loved to hunt blue ticks. And he went right down that edge, cut around us through the corn, went in behind us, went back through there and struck that track where we told him he was going to strike it, and just takes it through there 100 yards and trees it. But I say all that to say this. At the CHKC World Hunt, we was hunting to get into the final cast. I was beat. We had put a coon in the ground. All 4 dogs did. And this day and era, when dogs put coons in the ground, everything just gets screwed. I mean, that's just the way it is. If Country had a hole in him, I tried to break him out of the ground, and I learned a lesson. I never broke a dog out of the ground after that, because he was about 50% broke. So you couldn't catch him in the ground. But sometimes he would stay there because he's looking at a coon, and then he would leave before you got there. That's what happened on the night to get before the final cast. This was the hunt to get in the final 3 of the CHKC World. and it was 4-dog cast, and a little female blew away from there and treated coon, boom, right out of the gate. All three of us, rest of us take minus. I take a strike minus. Zach Burton or Bobby Burton, I can't remember, was hunting a dog called Topper. He grabbed a tree next to it and got pumped both ways. The other dog pulls a minus. Anyways, we're pretty much beat. I mean, it's CHKC World Hunt. You're hunting, and I think it was Tennessee down there. Not a lot of coons and stuff. Anyways, we blow them off that, and Bobby's dog gets way through there and gets treed, or Topper gets way through there and gets treed. Anyways, we hunt this at the very end of the night. This guy's got the cast one. His little female is treed with an hour left to go in the hunt with probably her second coon. But the guy don't tree her because he doesn't have to. And the whole time, I'm not even on the card. Okay, I am not even on the card. But I had pulled the least amount of minus. Anyways, when Topper trees his second coon, he's so far in the hole, you're getting struck back in for a quarter treat for 100. When he trees his, we're walking to his second tree. It now gets me within hearing where I can finally hear country. And when you get about 200 yards from that tree, I strike in tree country on deeper than him by quite a ways. We go in there. Topper, we're still getting beat because this little female's got 150 plus. But we walk down there. He flips Topper back loose. Now we walk the country. Now what happens is, if now Topper's treated his second coon, now when by the time we get to country, we've done a walk way out of hearing from this female. But when we get down the country, he's treated on the edge of we walk across the paved road, he's treated on the edge of a trailer park, trash can coon. And it's just a little wooded hillside knob there, and shine his tree, boom, he's got a coon. Now I'm beat. I mean, I in my mind, I can't win this cast. But if I score on another coon, just with a few minutes left, I have a chance. You know what I mean? Even if Topper trees one. But we got to get back into where we last heard these dogs. And I'll never forget, we walk back out that paved road. We start down that paved road, and I can't remember, Bobby or Zach is hunting Topper. They said, hey, can we hold up and listen? And when we stop up and listen, he strikes and trees Topper, and the judge says, cut. And I cut country loose right down the middle of it's a paved road, but it's a back road. And he goes right in front of us, 30, 40 yards, turns around and comes running right back between us. Wheels, and he's gone. And in about a minute or less, with a minute left to go in the hunt, he just falls treed right back at that same tree we had just come off of. And them guys are sitting there, and they're everybody in there except for Bobby or Zach, whoever was hunting Topper, sitting there going, well, that dog just went back the same tree. And I don't remember which one it was, just looked over that, and he said, that will be one of your dogs. Because he had treed Topper, but if I have a coon and he has a coon, he can't win. I'm going to have him by a quarter. And he said, that dog right there will be hunting tomorrow night's World Hunt. And the guy kind of looked at him. He said, the dog that just went back the same tree, he said, believe me, I've hunted with him. That dog has got another coon back here. And of course, now the guy has his female treed through there. He's wanting to hear it, but we walked back there, and I kid you not, I told the judge, I showed him the tree that we had just made, and he said, yup. I said, there's the coon that we just treed, and he was one tree over. Luckily, they didn't touch. It was about 3 or 4 foot in between the leaves, and he had a coon there. He knew that coon sat there the whole time. When I flipped him, that was a cast I'll never forget, on them style of casts, So a very memorable cast. Put me in the final 3 of the CHKC world. So I could share a lot of stories on the cast that dog won or whatever. He was just fun to hunt.
Sounds like it. You mentioned Droop Jr. is about 80% is what you would rate him. What would you have rated him as a cast winner? And when people our listeners got to realize this, most of what he was being hunted in were big hunts and, against some very, very tough competition.
Yeah.
Very legit competition. Yeah, what would you say
his cast wins percentage? Probably about 70%. And you sit there and say, man, how can that be? Well, I got news for you. When every night, back when I hunted junior, I'm just going to be honest with you. You drew one other good dog out. I'm just being straight up. That's just where the competition was at. In the era that I hunted country in, you didn't have to beat one good dog. You had to beat 3 good dogs. And so it was certainly a lot tougher, and face it, we was moving into an era then that's just a few years ago. Guys are hunting dogs for a living. And these dogs are, if you think that you could, if you think old Shep behind the barn is good enough to compete in these hunts and you just don't have the money to go, guess what? Take old Shep, get somebody to back it, because there's people wanting to invest in it every day to take you to a hunt. And these dogs, these guys, and today what we're hunting against, whatever, even from that era on, you're not gonna just have one good one and two duds. You got three good ones you got to beat.
Yep. Yep. Hey, Big Country ended up with one of the biggest names in the sport, John Strickland. Ashley Oxendine ended up. How did just briefly tell us how that happened and when abouts was that? So the dog was born in 2012.
Yeah, this would have been, man, you'd have to bring the years, but this would have been the year that he placed third at the CHKC World. The biggest mistake I made with Country is left Jeff Rickless, my good buddy, go hunting with him, because Jeff Rickless went hunting with him and he called his buddy John Strickland. We all know that they're really good friends. And he told John Strickland, I hunted with the best blue dog I've ever hunted. And I've hunted with everything that you own. And Strickland said, there ain't no way. And from that point forward, those that know John Strickland, when he never left off on buying that dog. And I had just finished up with the CHKC World, had a lot of stuff going on with work and stuff. And I was partnered up with him. Ashley Oxendine owned him at that time. By the way, an incredible guy. He bought Big Country off of us. And today in the stud pen and stuff like that is 100% is because of what John Strickland and Ashley Oxendine done with him. Incredible individual, great friend. Couldn't say, when the short time I hunted with him, he was just amazing. But it was through the CHKC World where Ashley called me and said, man, and of course, you know how those that know Ashley, how he talked, man, Bo, this guy by the name of John Strickland, this guy doesn't lay off. He's bound determined he's going to own part of this dog, and I made a pact to you or whatever. And Bo, I'm telling you right now, what are we going to do with this like that? And it was just kind of a weak moment. But here's what I will share with you. And I share the truth. I really felt that the only way the dog was going to get the due that he deserved in the stud pen is it needed to go that way. It's unfortunate it's that way, but I knew that it would attract a lot of different type of females, and the best females in the country would be bred to him, which the dog deserved that. And I always felt like he would be a very big reproducer. And of course, his reproduction career right now is still kind of young, but he's produced many big winners, and we're not done yet. Predominantly the dogs in that era, from because of Country's past and stuff, they predominantly get better from 4 to 8. And you're going to next 4 years. I said this 3 years ago that he would rival the top ranks in the reproduction side, and he's already doing it. He's hands above has sired. His pups have won more in the money hunts, and it's not even close. He's in the top 50 or 60, something like that, all time. And we're just getting started on that side of it. So he that's kind of how John got him. CHKC World, I was kind of down. He just swooped in there. He caught me at a weak moment, and I'm glad. It was the best thing that happened. They did more with him. They did more with Country than I could have ever dreamed of doing with him in the 2 years that they, of course they competed him, and then obviously started studying him out.
Well, hey, and unfortunately, it's just been, as we're recording this on July the 9th of 2025 here, he passed here, about 6 weeks ago or so. So he's Big Country is now gone. But I'm telling you, I'm sure for you and John and everybody that's hunted with this dog, there's a lot of memories. And, he wasn't just a good blue tick. He was a good coonhound. And you mentioned the reproduction side of it, Steve. There's also a lot of Walker females that came to back up to him.
Oh yeah. Well, he was in a perfect era. On that side of it. Obviously there's controversy on crossbreeds and stuff like that, but let's face it, in the last 20 years, and a lot of animals, predominantly your better crosses are crossbreeds. And why? Because it helps the hybrid genetics on that side of it, especially on the health side. It's just the way it is, and you're going to see that. And it's another whole topic we're not going to get into, but there's a lot. They brought the best of the best to breed to them, and but unfortunately, they brought a bunch that mediocres. That's just a part of life. Yeah. Okay, but I share all that to say this: Country is the legend he is today. I had a little part in it, a couple years, loved every minute of it. 2.5 years, whatever, that I had him at my place. But legends are made by this. It's not what you talk about them. It's not what you say about them. It's what the people around them say about the dog. And that's what he brought to the table. It wasn't, obviously I know how I feel about it, but really what made Country and why he's a legend today and always will be is because when you have people from other breeds that literally did not want to draw the dog out and loved the dog, would have owned him. You know what I'm saying? that's if you go back in history, that's what Legends was talked about, and he's certainly one of them in my mind. And will go down in history as one of the all-time greats, and not just because I had a piece in him. A lot of us did.
Yeah. Yeah, well, hey, Steve, this has been an interesting hour with you talking about your some of these dogs that you've handled here, and there's been some good ones. You mentioned Lou and Gypsy Lady, some couple honorable mentions. There's several that I know that we didn't even get to talk about that would have been made the top 3 for a bunch of different guys probably, but your number 3 was the Walker female stylish Abigail, the Clover bred dog. Your number 2 was the a dog that I'll never forget, Blue River Droop Jr. and the Blue Tick, and then your number 1 Big Country there. So, man, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you and hearing some of these stories and hearing you talk about these dogs and obviously just the passion you have for them. And it really goes to, these dogs are more than just hunting dogs. They've left their legacies, I guess, and to be able to walk along and hunt with some of these dogs like this has just got to be, you'll never forget them, I guess. But as for our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this episode and hearing Steve talk about these dogs here. And Steve, I want to thank you for taking the time today. I'm sure you've probably got a golf game going on later this afternoon and got plenty of other things to do, but I appreciate your time and thank you for joining me today on this episode and for doing this. So I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I always say the friendships that have come throughout this, hard to believe I'm 52 years old already, but the friendships that have been created in the last 30 years is if you ask me today, that's the biggest thing for me that I take away from it. Some of my best friendships today are if these dogs introduced us to it. So thanks for having me, Alan. Really appreciate it.
Hey folks, this is Alan Gingrich here with an exclusive offer for our Hunting Ops Podcast listeners only. We're giving you a 10% discount for all UKC gear and apparel. To place your order and get your exclusive discount, go to the shop at ukcdogs.com and use the discount code HUNTUKC, all uppercase and all one word. And thank you for tuning into our podcast.
Thank you for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow so you don't miss any of our new episodes or content.